now for more insight. It's a pleasure to welcome to studio Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Relik Shafir, a former commander at the Tel Nof Air Force Base and a former combat pilot in the Israeli Air Force, and journalist Neri Zilber, advisor to the Israel Policy Forum and host of the Israel Policy Podcast. Gentlemen, thank you both so much. What a moment for the Middle East. I'm going to start with you, Relik. We're looking at those surreal images, frankly, of this mass mourning. It's going to take place over a period of days, certainly emboldened looking Iran right now. Your sense, your take?
I think it has absolutely no meaning for Iran going forward with its policies. It's a point in time that reminds them of Hussein in the Battle of Karbala, October 680, and a point to bring up emotions within the Iranian public to support the regime, which, whether they support it or not, the regime is holding Iran in an ironclad, with an ironclad fist. So I don't think it's more. It is more than what we see.
Which is that Mushtaba is nowhere to be seen.
It was absolutely clear that he wasn't going to be there. As they said, he's disfigured, doesn't want to appear that way. And he's still the decision maker, rather than the IRGC, who did not want to accept the MOU, but he forced them to do that. So they're going to keep on running their game at least until November. Unfortunately, for our prime minister, our elections are in October.
Right.
And so President Trump is going to hold Netanyahu in short leash. And if he sees that it's not strong enough, he might invite Netanyahu's contesters to a meeting in the White House. So he's going to put Netanyahu on short leash, and Netanyahu will not like that. They may have an appearance next week saying, well, they have small differences and so on, but that's my vision of what's going to happen within the next 3 months.
Neri, your thoughts on exactly that?
So look, I'll disagree slightly with Relik. I think it is important and significant what we're seeing today and yesterday in Tehran. It's a show of defiance and a show of force by the Iranian regime. Just remember, 4 months ago, really, the supreme leader was taken out. Dozens of his senior leadership and other military commanders were taken out. The people now under the open sky in Tehran saying, you know, death to America, death to Israel, death to Trump, death to Bibi, they were being hunted by Israeli and U.S. airplanes for weeks. And now, 4 months later, they've not only survived, they're thriving. They're, as Relik mentioned, entering into these negotiations on their terms with the United States. And so it's very significant outwardly to show this show of force, and also domestically, internally, vis-a-vis however many numbers and percentages of Iranians that disagree with this regime. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, are going to be taken to the streets in support of this regime. And by the way, my colleagues that report from inside Iran reported today that the funeral procession for the Supreme Leader, Khamenei, is actually going to cross the border into Iraq. It's going to visit the holy Shiite cities of Najaf and Karbala. So this isn't just a, shall we say, domestic Iranian affair. It is now a show of force across the Middle East. Again, 4 months after it was looking quite different for this regime.
What do you make then, Relik, of the delegations who are there right now, including from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Turkey? Certainly not a surprise to many, but what does it tell you about the regime's survival within the perceptions across the Middle East right now?
I think the perception and the reality is that the United States is not a reliable defender for those countries that you mentioned. And the fact that they stopped short of defeating Iran puts those countries in harm's way, in the sense that if the United States loses interest in that area, the terror that Iran may force on these countries is such that they don't want to be in a position where they're seen as enemies of Iran. So they were able to break up the Abraham's Accords. And this is not good news for us because these countries see that the United States might leave Israel on the side or under the bus as well. So who are they going to rely on? That is the crux of the matter and the friction between Saudi Arabia and the United States and the other countries other than the Emirates. So they don't have the willpower or the strength to combat Iran on their own. They were hit pretty badly, a lot worse than Israel was hit. And they didn't see that the United States is standing by them resolutely. So I think they're afraid. One note, I think President Trump holds the cards in the sense the bait on the one hand and the whip on the other. He's using the bait. I think he is smart enough to understand that after November elections, he will need to have a show of force with the Iranians. Otherwise, he's going to be ridiculed. So that's a point to remember.
One also wonders what it's like for him to see a poet performing at these ceremonies, calling for his assassination while these talks are supposed to resume in the coming days. But we will get to that a little bit later. Gentlemen, fascinating indeed. Journalist Neri Zilber, your take on what we just heard?
No, I mean, your heart can't but not go out to Lily and all those brave Iranians, both in the diaspora and especially those inside Iran, that yearn for freedom, that yearn for liberty, and that yearn for a day when the Islamic Republic is no more. My concern, my sadness really, is that the last few months and the attempt by the U.S. and Israel to actually precipitate a real regime change failed, and it only reinforced the Islamic Republic's grip over that beautiful country. The only thing worse than kind of shooting at a dictator is shooting and missing at a dictator. Now, the older Khamenei is gone, his son is still in place.
i24 News has exclusive updates on upcoming meetings between U.S. and Israeli officials to that very point, saying that military options are still on the table, especially in light of these stalled negotiations, for want of a better word. Your take on the likelihood of that, what it could look like down the line?
Look, there are always ongoing conversations between Israeli and U.S. officials, especially on the military side. That's a constant before the war, during the war, after the war. That's a constant. It's always useful, this predates the recent war, it goes back years, to put forward by both the U.S. and Israel, and ideally by the U.S. and Israel together, a credible military option that is projected outwards towards especially Iran, but other mutual enemies. My sense is that this is the purpose of this report, to make it at least a credible show that a military option still remains on the table, despite the fact that I don't think there's a great appetite, as Relik mentioned earlier, especially amongst Americans, to see this war resume.
30 seconds left. Your take on exactly that, the likelihood of a renewed military option down the line, Relik?
There is a likelihood if the United States wants to act in a very aggressive manner. It might unleash Israel for a day or two, let's say attack energy plants to darken Isfahan and Tehran, and then say, well, this wasn't coordinated or something like this. So it leaves the United States as the good cop that is holding the bad cop. That is a possibility, very small one.
We certainly will be watching, and we so appreciate insights from both Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Relik Shafir, and Neri Zilber. Thank you very much for being here in studio.